Throughout much of the COVID timeframe, Japan was closed off to the rest of the world. However, it was until 2024 that they reopened their doors to tourists. In this video, we're going to compare the Omiya Bonsai Museum in Japan, as well as the Pacific Bonsai Museum here in Federal Way. What are you waiting for? Let's go. So luckily for us, Aarin Packard, the current curator of the Pacific Bonsai Museum, is going to give us all the details on how he runs this museum currently. Walk to Omiya Bonsai Village, and it's exciting to see some of those beautiful trees. I'll check out the museum as well. Take you along. Now, the purpose of a museum is to collect and preserve, interpret, and display objects of artistic and cultural or scientific significance for the study and education of the public. Wow, what a tree. And look at this pot. It shows so much patina and age. It's chipped in the best way. These branches are so perfectly formed. Look at this beauty. Oh my goodness. Japanese maple. A beautiful Japanese Zelkova. Japanese white pine, Goimatsu. Beautiful forest. Look at this. This is a Japanese beach. Fully white. Oh my goodness. Look at that. Look at that ramification and branching. Look at the Shimbaku right here. It's actually quite big in terms of the needles. Buko, 350 years old. This is a Sorgentii. Mizo spruce. Japanese white pine. Korean hornbeam. Beautiful, chunky base. Beautiful pot. My goodness. It's a winterberry. And I've never seen a winterberry this big in my life. I didn't even know the trunk gets this big. It's hugging a rock, actually. Amazing. Amazing. There's another Chinese quince. When you look at this tree, they're not too worried about barbells or barbell branches when it comes to the broom style. I mean, if it's acceptable here at the museum, it's acceptable for your tree. Absolutely. Do a quick tour here. Another beautiful black pine. Love the height on this thing. Oh my gosh. Okay, this has to be my favorite tree so far. What this white pine is killer. Oh my gosh. The dead wood on there. Twists the turns. Absolutely amazeballs. Nice big Zelkova done in a broom style. This has to be the queen of trees here. A pot is the size of a bathtub. And the tree looks to be at least 8 feet across. That is huge. Wow. Shinpaku. Huge, 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 huge. Trunk right there. This thing is ancient, maybe 2,000 years old. Look at this guy. It's an oleaster. It's an Elaeagnus pungens. Scraggly bark. Alright, let's check out these conifers here. Hinoki cypress, needle juniper. Wow, look at this. This is not anybody's favorite because it's pokey. But look at that. Another beautiful white pine. And another beautiful Japanese black pine. Whew. This right here is an amazing looking Japanese black pine. It is ginormous. Ginormous. And look at all that movement on this tree. God. Big Prudus movement right here. Very old. Big ocean paku. Look at this. Like the three kings over here. These Japanese black pine. Just incredible. Incredible. How was that? Did you guys enjoy that tour? Now, in contrast to that, I actually want to show you what the Pacific Bonsai Museum is like here in Featherweight, Washington.
Hi, I'm Aarin Packard. I'm the curator at Pacific Bonsai Museum in Federal Way, Washington. I've been the curator here for just over 10 years, and the mission of Pacific Bonsai Museum is to inspire a closer look at nature through the living art of bonsai. Pacific Bonsai Museum is an open-air art gallery set within a serene forest. Our alcoves are designed to create space for the bonsai trees to be enjoyed as works of art in their own right, juxtaposed against a mature second growth forest. So when you see the representation of bonsai as these sort of miniature trees, it's contrasted against these grand, tall, towering Doug firs that create this really unique comparison between nature on a grand scale and on a miniature scale. Pacific Bonsai Museum features a diverse collection of bonsai sourced from around the world. We have bonsai trees from Japan, pinjing from China. We have bonsai from Korea and Taiwan, from Canada, as well as the United States. Pacific Bonsai Museum engages the public in a variety of ways, including exhibitions which focus on presenting bonsai to audiences in new and diverse ways to generate a different perspective on bonsai than one they might have previously. The exhibitions really become the core offering of the museum, as we don't simply present the bonsai in their own context as sort of extensions of Asian tradition or sort of horticultural curiosities. We take them and present them as art objects and reinterpret them for audiences, focusing on a variety of themes, including historical context and narratives, the societal changes that have shaped them over time, as well as their beauty and artistry, focusing on the artists and their stories that have created them over time. We provide field trips and docent-led tours, workshops, and other public events, with the goal being to create the broadest appeal for bonsai so that people can come and experience it, find a way that they can connect with it in their own way. One of the roles that Pacific Bonsai Museum strives to fulfill in the bonsai community is to help explore the boundaries of bonsai as an art form and finding ways to connect it to contemporary audiences today. One of the ways that we do that is by exploring connections and relationships with contemporary artists who we work with to create containers or exhibitions or other forms of visual art that we will then pair with the bonsai in either exhibition or special displays. This bird's nest spruce forest really represents, I think, one of the things that Pacific Bonsai Museum is most known for, and that is exploring the boundaries of contemporary bonsai and finding new ways to engage with the art community. This originally started out as a group planting, a forest planting, where all of these trees were in the same forest or in the same container. And when I first came here, I separated them in the efforts to try to revitalize the trees because as a group they were not thriving. And so one of the methods to sort of help improve the health of group planting is to take it apart, get the trees stronger again, and then reassemble them back into that same container. But while they were apart, the idea came to try to still maintain them as a group, as a forest planting, but come up with a system to give it some more flexibility in its design. When it goes into a singular container, you're limited with how you can present that tree. And so the idea to have containers that could somehow be modular, as well as interlocking or sort of combined, much like Legos, in different combinations to help expand the flexibility in a way that this tree could be utilized. And so working with a Canadian-Japanese artist named David Umamoto, who is a fine art sculptor, approached him to create, using his own aesthetic, a variety of containers that we could plant the trees in but also be able to reconfigure. And so one of our hallmarks, right, is how can we take something apart to put it back together in a new way. I think that describes the museum pretty well. My goal as a curator is to have a very diverse collection representing not just bonsai in a specific region or country of origin, but to have species that sort of represent the variety of bonsai across the country. One of the other aspects of diversity within the museum is to have a variety of artists represented. And so there are many historically significant trees from American artists as well as those in Japan. And so the ultimate goal with any bonsai museum is to have a diverse collection, and you will be able to find that at Pacific Bonsai Museum. This tree to my left is from the collection of John Naka, who many revere as one of the most significant bonsai teachers in American bonsai history. This tree that he started in 1957 is one of his earliest bonsai creations. I believe this is the fifth one he sort of identifies as sort of creating. This has appeared in one of his more well-known books, Bonsai Techniques, as a very early representation of his bonsai career. And it's been planted on this stone, which has been part of this composition since the 50s. And so this tree is just a great example of some of the significant legacy trees that the museum has within its collection. This is another legacy tree right next to the juniper by John Naka, is a California juniper from his longtime friend and bonsai brother, Harry Harao. This is a California juniper that was collected in the Mojave Desert, and it came to us following Harry's passing. And one of the things that this sort of represents is that when this tree came to us, it was in a soil that was set up for the Southern California environment. So transitioning it up to the Pacific Northwest required that we change out the soil to one that's more suited to horticulture up here. What also came along with this tree was the historic design, and so this tree was actually laying more horizontally on its side. It was actually leaning down like that. And so the opportunity to change the design, or what we would call advance the design, presented itself as a result of us having to adjust the horticultural nature of the soil system. And so in doing that, I reached out to Ryan Neal, a contemporary bonsai practitioner, professional artist, who helped assist with that operation. And so part of the museum, while we are caring for these trees, and much like the John Naka tree, where it has this visual consistency that's sort of been built over time, this tree is another example of how taking a historically significant tree, changing the design, utilizing a contemporary artist to help with that operation, further builds on the legacy of these trees that can also benefit them in a different way than simply maintaining their historical appearance. This tree is another really special addition to our collection. It is a bald cypress, which is native typically to the southeastern United States. So it's a native tree. It's a deciduous conifer, which means it's a pretty unique blending of characteristics. It reproduces conically, but it loses its leaves in the fall. And so not just the species itself is unique, but this tree comes from Von Banting, who was a bonsai artist down in Louisiana. And this tree represents a significant aesthetic shift in the thought process of bonsai practice in the US. He observed the native bald cypress growing in his environment that developed this distinctive flat top style as they aged. prior to that, most bonsai, specifically bald cypress, were imitating the pine style that you would associate with Japanese bonsai. And the connection to creating a bonsai that reflected the tree growing in its natural environment was kind of a watershed moment for the progression of bonsai as an American expression. And so this tree represents that shift. This was the first tree that Vaughan developed into this flat top style. And so not only does the tree itself possess uniqueness, but sort of what it symbolizes as the transition from replicating bonsai styles from a Japanese tradition and looking to our own native trees as aesthetic references for the same species but in a miniature form has now become a standard practice today. This tree represents that shift occurring, and Vaughan is largely credited with helping make that transition happen. What's another interesting component as these trees evolve is this container, though, is a new addition to this composition being created by a new bonsai potter, now Tokutake, which references the form of the original one, but draws upon some motifs of the southeast with the pelican and this sort of swampy green color with brown and reds to sort of reference the environment that this tree natively grows in. Perhaps our most iconic bonsai tree in the collection is a trident maple that we call the Demoto maple. This tree is extremely special for a variety of reasons. One is its age. It was imported into the United States in 1913, so it's been in the US for over 100 years. It was imported as a part of the Panama Pacific Expo's 1915 Expo in San Francisco. It was imported with a number of other trees from Japan, and after the fair it was purchased by the Demoto family. They were a family of nurserymen in the Bay Area. This is the Demoto maple. It's considered our crown jewel of our collection. If the size of it was not an indicator of its uniqueness alone, this is a really big bonsai tree. Most people think of bonsai as much smaller than this, and so trees of this scale are fairly rare, not just in the US, but in Japan as well. This would be considered an imperial-sized tree, meaning that it was usually only found in the imperial palace that would merit the scale of something this large. And so it not only speaks to the significance of this tree from a bonsai perspective in terms of its height and its age, because this was also imported in the United States back in the early 1900s. So as part of the Panama Pacific Expo, this tree came over in 1913, was imported with a number of other bonsai, but this really was kind of the main marquee tree for that group of trees that came over. There's one photo of this tree, and it wasn't much smaller than it is now 100 years ago. A little bit, but not by much. And so this tree was probably already at least 100 years old, if not older, when it came over in the early 1900s. So we can estimate this tree is probably in the 200 to 250-year-old range in terms of its age. But it basically lived most of its life in the US and California, surviving through the Great Depression and World War II before it came up to the Pacific Bonsai Museum in the early 90s. It's since been formally donated to the museum, and now we are the stewards of it, and it'll continue to stay here and be cared for by myself and the next curator and the next curator after that, as it sort of sits here and sort of showcases what bonsai really is this sort of many hands caring for this tree over decades and decades. And really encapsulates the story of Japanese Americans in the U.S., specifically the Demoto family, their story of immigration, incarceration, overcoming the challenges of that experience, and still surviving and finding a way to thrive despite the hardships. the management of the bonsai collection is handled in a very similar way to museums. Within the museum's collection, we have about 150 trees. That is sort of the number that seems to be the sweet spot for how many we can maintain in a high state of care, as well as have enough to rotate through the museum. The goal is to have the trees be in different locations and also be exchanged somewhat regularly. Those are largely, though, guided by the exhibition that is currently curated. And so I will look at our collection to see which trees are able to communicate the information that I'm hoping to share with the viewer. And then those trees are selected based on that subject and then placed, obviously, in a position that they're going to survive or thrive horticulturally. There's many microclimates within the museum. And so knowing which tree can exist within which alcove is important. And while we do tend to have our greatest hits, so to speak, our most iconic trees are usually on display, we have another 100 or so that are off view. Any museum doesn't show 100% of its collection. It's a portion of it that is sort of prepared for an exhibition and displayed and then rotated off. But we do have a number of iconic trees that are regularly on display as part of an exhibition, but they themselves will rotate around. We also exchange trees when they're seasonally appropriate. So, for example, if we have azaleas that are blooming or trees that are in fall color, there's an additional section of the museum that I use as sort of a special exhibitions display space that allows me a little bit more flexibility to swap trees in and out for seasonal interests such as flower or fruit or fall color. One of the hallmarks of Pacific Bonsai Museum is our exhibitions. My role as curator is to create exhibitions that not only present bonsai in their traditional sense, but also to find new ways to engage the public and allow them a chance to see bonsai from a new perspective. This current exhibition that we have is called Small Talk, and the idea is the trees actually have the ability to answer your questions about bonsai. Bonsai is the visitors to Pacific Bonsai Museum have a variety of questions about the care and upkeep and the art of bonsai. And the idea was to address our most frequently asked questions in a very fun and engaging way, aimed specifically at younger audiences. The idea that the bonsai themselves could answer your questions was a fun way to approach this subject. And so the trees themselves are going to be able to tell you how often they are watered, why they're pruned, why wire is used to shape them. And the idea being that bonsai can be an approachable and engaging art form for people of all ages. The exhibitions that we mount here at the museum are extremely important to helping people understand the value of bonsai, not just as a traditional craft, but also as a bridge to different cultures, as understanding history and what has gone into the time and sort of the techniques that have developed to shape these trees to basically create a deeper appreciation for them. Ultimately, our goal at Pacific Bonsai Museum is not to create bonsai practitioners, but to create bonsai appreciators. And the hope is that they will then return to see the value of these trees as we do and continue to support the work of the museum.
Now, the purpose of this video wasn't to compare the two museums against each other, as each museum had its character. The one in Japan, Omiya Bonsai Museum, was established in 2010, but the history of the village has been around for over 100 years. And you can see that the trees in the museum reflect that age. I do love seeing the ancient Japanese black pines found at Omiya Bonsai Museum, but I'm proud of the fact that the Pacific Bonsai Museum has trees that represent the Pacific Northwest. So the trees that are found in each museum do represent more of what is naturally found in that geography. Through the previous curator, Dave DeGroat, and Aarin Packard, they have done a magnificent job of keeping the museum up to date, fresh, and interesting. So the next time you're in Japan or the Pacific Northwest, don't pass up the opportunity to come visit the museum. So if you like what you're seeing, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate all the support that's possible.